welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for today's conversation. And today's episode is a very special one for several reasons. The main one being that our guest today is Dani Beinstein. And Dani is a psychological and intuitive counseling astrologer. And she is my favorite astrologer I have ever come in contact with. And I can say this with confidence because I have had the privilege of connecting with Dani for a little while now. She, a little over a year ago, started hosting virtual new moon circles. And I think either the first or the second, or maybe the third, I started going, and I've been going consistently ever since. So it's been over a year where I think every single month, except for one or two, I have gone to these new moon circles led by Dani, and they have been so healing and impactful on my life. As I've shared before, I'm very discerning around the advice I seek and the wisdom I intake. And Dani is someone who I continuously look to for support and guidance, and someone who feels so grounding and nourishing and connecting to me. She's now someone I look to as a mentor and a teacher, and in my heart, a friend, and I respect her so much. I think the work she does in the world is truly magical and so needed. That is why I am so honored to bring her onto the podcast today. This is also a special episode of the podcast because it is our first time using video. So if you would like, you can head over to YouTube and watch this podcast. This is definitely going to be a journey for us. I am not great with technology and also not always comfortable on camera, although I've definitely been challenging myself with that in many ways over the last few years. But I hope that you enjoyed this new layer of video if you choose to engage with it. And I'm sure you'll see my dog come in and out once in a while. I'm sure you'll see all the real and raw behind the scenes. And I love that. I think that's something special about the video, can bring you into the conversation even more. And I really hope you feel like you are a part of this conversation. Dani, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Before I get into anything else, I want to start with the first question I always ask guests, which is, what is something you wish people knew about you that you don't think many do?
Oh, what an interesting question. I've never thought about that before because I don't know how people see me. So I can't say what may be there or may not be there. The thing that comes to mind is who I am. We all have many different sides to us, right? So my work brings the more sagacious part of me out, right? Where I'm more in kind of my sage archetype and probably more maternal in my work, motherly. But in my everyday, here's something. I don't check astrology every 5 minutes. I don't consult astrology for small things. I use my astrological knowledge as the same way I use it for my clients, which is as a tool and a gateway to and an invitation. But people will say, would you do this on Mercury retrograde or what? I don't hold myself to that level of restriction. I also encourage my clients to live outside of that box of restriction. So to me, I never want to be limited to the tool that I am known for understanding. I think that comes across, right? I use it for myself the same exact way that I use it with my clients.
I love that you brought that up, and that was something that I wanted to talk to you about specifically around your personal practice when it comes to your spiritual practice, your intuition, your rituals. I'm really curious how that shows up for you because I've only been in spaces where you are leading the space and
Yes.
this wise sage healer, and it's so felt and impactful. But I'm curious how that iterates in your own life.
Yeah, I am not a dogmatic person. I'm not an ideological person, and I am not a prescriptive person. So I lead my own life through my own intuition. And so, if I'm craving meditation, I will pick up that tool. But to be honest, I have not meditated in a formal way really since moving out to the woods, because I don't feel the need to in quite the same way, because every night when I'm outside, let's say, letting the dogs out for their final bathroom break, and I look up at the sky, I am seeing I can see the stars completely, unless it's there's cloud cover. I can hear the animals, or if I'm sitting exactly where I'm sitting now, and what my window, the window in front of me looks out into is the forest, is our forest land, and I see a deer prancing. That is meditative to me. So being in sync with nature, living in seasons with nature, I felt less of a need to just go into full-on meditation every morning and wake myself up and move into meditation the way, let's say, when I was living in the heart of Los Angeles, I felt the need to. I'm not prescriptive. I'm not like, oh, I have to do this every morning, or, some people chant every morning, or they do. I live my life really intuitively, and I ask what I need. What I do a lot of, and where I circulate a lot of my income, is in body work, because I am with clients all day and I need help moving energy so that I am not showing up to my clients in stagnation. So that is a place where I invest time. I often have to drive there, and it requires a financial investment, but that's taking the time for myself where I can be in meditation while I am having someone help move that energy through me. That's something that is necessary given the nature of my work. And then I go into a meditative state, and I do something once a week in that vein, because it's so important for me to be able to do my work in the way that, at the level that I want to be able to do it.
Absolutely. I think everyone having clarity around what those things are that enable them to be the person that they want to be in the world is so important. And I love that you highlighted living in tune with the seasons, because that's been becoming more and more important in my life and more life-changing for me. And I feel like you just put to words something that I've been feeling, which is that living seasonally and living connected to nature allows me to embody this meditative state. And not in the sense that I am trying to always be like a monk walking in
Yes,
living in
exactly.
the mountains,
Yes,
or like
yes,
being
yes.
enlightened, but in the sense that I can be so present, that I can be so connected, and I can live intuitively, versus just having these moments in my meditation that's separate from my day to day.
Yes, exactly. And growing up, I was fortunate. I grew up in New York and Connecticut, and we would get away to the tropics or the Caribbean in the winter. And that was such a big part of the world that I grew up in. Like, you went down to the beaches in the winter. And I don't feel called to do that. I want to have that experience in summer, not in winter. There are moments where I crave, oh, it would be nice to be in warm weather right now. But then at the height of summer, I crave being in winter. So I crave that kind of opposite. That's part of my core nature. But I really, since we've moved here 3 years ago, I've been pretty strict about limiting travel, air travel, unless I have to go visit my family for a reason, to climates that are different, in the sense that I want to, in the winter, I winter. So I prefer to go to colder climates if I have to, where my family lives in Colorado. So it's the same now. So it's the same seasonal thing. But my sisters and I traveled down to Patagonia 2 Octobers ago, and it wasn't that far. They're in the opposite season, but it was temperature wise very similar. And that's something that I'd like to, I can always change my mind, but that's something that I'd like to commit to for the near future. Now, there is a caveat, which is my partner is Kiwi and they are on the opposite. So it's very possible that in December, we are going to go visit his family and I will be in the opposite. So I'm not really rigid about it. But I like to, as much as I can, live in sync with that. I think that there is something really beneficial to that on a spiritual level, on an emotional level, to not rush out of the discomfort of the seasons, either when summer is too hot or winter feels too cold and barren, but embrace what it has to teach us.
You're speaking so much to my experience. Growing up in New York, I hated the winters. I hated the cold. And I was always the one in my family saying, we are going away for winter break and we're going to the tropics. We're going to the beach. And that did serve me at that time, but I had to, and then I lived in Hawaii and I lived in Southern California. So I was like, eternal summer. I will never do a winter again. And then I had to choose to embrace the seasons again. I realized that living in this external, eternal summer was forcing me to live in an internal, eternal summer. And that was so healthy for me. And then I spent a year in England and had my first 4 seasons in a really long time. And that was deeply healing for me. And so challenging, but it was a life-changing experience. It really was. And now I live in upstate New York, and I really think that I need all 4 seasons. I'm a seasonal being, and trying to escape that was trying to escape different parts of myself. And this really feels like the first year where I let myself winter. And that was my intention. And it's been challenging and it's made me feel really soft and raw, but it's been exactly what I needed. And I'm also, of course, always allowed to change our minds, but I'm really trying to dedicate myself to that and devote myself to this seasonal living.
It's really a gift. And, being in my mid 40s now, time moves faster. So I'm trying to be more present because I feel the rapid movement of time. So December is such a busy month with the holidays, et cetera. But I love January. And then I actually also love February. It's when I get to March, but then I remind myself, it goes by so fast. I get into March and it's just 3 weeks until spring starts. And then down here, what I've noticed, I've only been in Tennessee for just over 3 years, but I've noticed that really things really bloom in the very beginning of May, very late April and very beginning of May. So that period of March and April, that's actually where I feel more challenged. But because it is entering into spring, I allow myself more movement in that, right? So I don't do anything dogmatically, but there's also something about presence and time, because I know for me, for example, that once it gets hot again, I'm not a giant consumer of clothing. I wear pretty much similar things every day, but I find that in winter, I'm like, oh, I need a summer dress. And then in summer, I want to buy sweaters. It's like I crave the opposite season, and I just let myself do that. I'm not trying to force against that, because I think there's something in life about allowing oneself to have the emotional experience that we have, right? And the more, if I don't resist it, and if I don't just indulge it, there's something in that for me.
Yeah, and this is something seasonal living has allowed me to do is really giving myself permission to be where I'm at and to
Yes.
feel how I'm feeling and to move at my own pace and to go about my process in the way that I need to, and also to do things differently because a lot of people, I grew up in the culture where it's January's the new year and you rush into it and you do
Yes.
all the things. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And January is my time to process. And I definitely start to envision and get clarity, but I'm
Hmm.
not yet. It's still slowing down in an inwards process and rounding. And I never would have given myself permission to do that in the past.
Yeah, I mean, there's something so incredible about the slow life. I remember learning about the slow food movement when I was in college. And I just recently read about the idea of slow decorating, which is what I've been doing, but I didn't know it was a concept, which is cultivating things over time in a space. And I've been that, I try to be that way around clothing, right? I don't invest in fast fashion. But the concept, I really try and lean into that across the board because we all have our addictions. Mine has been travel, but it has slowed down considerably being here, having animals that I don't want to leave that often, right? Working with that tension, that's an opportunity. And I recognize that's a privileged opportunity, but just on a surface level, looking at that, where is my rush to explore all the other places? What expansiveness am I not allowing myself right outside my front door?
Again, I've had a similar experience. Travel has been a huge part of my life, and it's
Yeah.
always something I've craved, and I love it so much. And I think I will always be a traveler, but I no longer see myself as a wanderer. And I've really had to
Ah, I love that
decide.
distinction.
Yeah, and it's really since I've moved to New York, which is what,
From Asheville.
yes,
Yeah.
I have had to decide to put down roots because I want to, but there's
Yes.
these warring parts of ourselves, like you're saying, and making the distinction of, okay, I'll always travel. I can always have the opportunity to travel, but I don't need to wander. I can put down my roots here. I can be steady here. And that again has been a challenge, but it's finding the beauty in that discomfort and allowing myself to travel in different ways and explore in different ways, adventure in
Yeah.
different ways, see the magic, see my outside neighborhood anew every single day has really helped me appreciate life in a new way.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to presence, right? Which is the greatest and oldest spiritual teaching, be here now.
Mhm.
That's really what seasonal living offers us. It's really a gift if we embrace it. I also think that is my ancestry, meaning like my ancestry does not come from living in the tropics. So it's not epigenetically as organic to me. It is organic to me to live in the seasons because that is what the past of what I know, many generations lived. So I also think there's something there, right? But then in tropical places, you'll have the rainy season and the dry season. So that's how it manifests, as an example. And there's something in our culture where we are extreme pleasure hunters. We want to avoid anything that's uncomfortable or difficult. And I actually think that increases our anxiety. Living through a winter is not a hard thing the way there are real hard things in this world. But just even building stamina, not always rushing to the places where we feel good, because then we become addicted to securing comfort, which is arguably one of the most, it's counter to spiritual evolution because there is no way to experience spiritual evolution without a degree of pain. And I also think this kind of obsession over the past maybe decade in spiritual or wellness circles around ease and flow, chop wood, carry water. I guess there's a difference between ease and flow, but this idea that it should just everything should be easy. Relationships should be easy. That's not how we evolve and grow. When we embrace the tension of whatever moment we are in that is challenging, is delivering to us, that's where we develop and strengthen our character and our constitution. And because we have leaned in certain sectors of society, leaned so much towards materialist comfort, there is a spiritual poverty. And I recognize that this is very out of sync with a lot of the modern present day teachings, which are that enjoy comfort and constant abundance and ease. But abundance is also flow. It's like currency. It's in and out. It's also, as human beings, we are not meant to just laze around indefinitely and receive everything that we want, right? We are meant to engage in the world, exercise our skill sets, utilize our skill sets, hone them, and know our own capability. For some people, that shows up in the physical world, which I also think is necessary, like building strength or stamina in that way, but there's also an emotional stamina. And I was thinking about this because when I was 33, 2014, I lost my job. I was let go from my job. I got bed bugs, I think, in the following couple months. Had to let go of everything I owned. Lived on my sister's couch. Figured out how I was going to make money. House sat, dog sat. As I was finishing my master's program and starting to do what became what I do now. And then 2016, so it's after 2 years of living like this, I have a near-death experience. My car flips 4 times on the 101, and whatever I did own, I then lost, including the car. So I was homeless without a car in Los Angeles, and everything that I owned fit in not even a carry-on, but basically like a purse. And I don't look back at any resentment of that time. It was incredibly beneficial to me because, first of all, I realized family and community are everything. And it liberated me. I was never a collector of stuff prior to that. I have a kind of nomadic soul in that way. I own a house now, and I look around all the time and I go, what is all this stuff? And how did I accumulate this stuff? And I personally do not have an attachment to stuff, almost in an unhealthy way. But I love being in a beautiful space, and so I feel very grateful for that. But what that taught me, and living on very little income in Los Angeles, which is all about pretty things, shiny things, etc. Walking and Uber because I didn't have a car, borrowing my sister's car, like all these things were, and I wouldn't even consider them real hardship. I really wouldn't. Like that was definitely a kind of washing machine few years that I was in, but I still wouldn't consider that real hardship. But it strengthened me and it taught me a lot, and would never trade it for the world. And similarly, in the early years of my relationship, when we still have stuff all the time, but the early years of my relationship were really challenging. But I knew that this person is my teacher, and I knew that we had come together for me to slough off parts of my ego and parts of the way that I thought the world was supposed to work. And I'm not righteous about it either, but I'm not a person that's like, oh, I just want life to be easy. That's not how I tap into my soul. That's not how I tap into God. That's not how I feel resourceful. I have I've extended moments, like I've been in an extended moment really since coming to Nashville where I have experienced ease for probably the first time since I was a young child, relative ease in comparison. But I am very aware, because of what I've experienced, it's all temporal. And nature teaches me that every day, right? It's like when the leaves fall from the trees, they're going into the ground. Something new it looks barren, but there is growth happening. And so I feel it's very out of step with a lot of the current teachings, but it is my true essence and how I move through this world.
I could not agree more. I'm totally on the same page. There are so many things you just said that I want to touch on, but overarching, the things that come easiest to me are often what holds me back. And my comfort zone, my safety net can at best just keep me stagnant and at worst can be really harmful to me. And it's me having to push myself past that and really go deep within my heart and say, what is my true heart's desire? What is my true intention for my life? And what is my intuition telling me? And what do I need to do to align with all of that? And it's almost always something that's outside my comfort zone
Yeah.
and so challenging. And even showing up in community, for example, the circles I go to with you, it's very, I remember the first I made a conscious decision, and this is just such a small example, but I made such a conscious decision because I felt comfortable in the circle and with you holding it that I was going to speak during every circle that I showed up to with
And you
you.
do.
And I do. And that is not me at all. That's very challenging for me. When I'm holding the space or I'm with people that I'm close to, that's a different story. But when it comes to groups of people that I don't know and I'm showing up for it, I'm a participant. I usually don't say anything and I don't get vulnerable, but connection is such a core value of mine and to connect with people in that way. And so I made that intention for myself and it's been very challenging, but I do it. And I think it's taking steps like that and really being honest with ourselves that allows us to start to become the person that we're meant to be fully.
I really think so. And listen, there are areas where I am deeply limited. Like I'm with a surfer merman who has, he says that he had fear and he conquered it, but I watch him die. He's a big wave surfer and I'm afraid of waves. I'm afraid of the ocean. And I see the way that he just dives into the ocean and it's like he's one with the ocean, right? I watched him bungee jump, the biggest bungee jump in the world in New Zealand. And I was shaking even being at the platform that he jumped off of, right? So the physical realm is a place where I do have a lot of fear. Whereas speaking aloud or publishing something I write, I don't have fear. Whereas he may have more fear around that. We all carry areas where we lean into it and we're meant to. Writing comes easily to me, so I do it, right? I'm not saying don't do the easy things. And I'm not saying I conquer all the things that scare me, but there is something about leaning into that. Like I started with jumping in cold lakes, which is like, don't love doing that. Okay, I'm not ready to get into a big wave situation. I'm not athletically prepared for that. But how can I do things that are uncomfortable in the physical realm that make me feel also stronger and more capable, right? Because I'm also with a man that is very protective and very skilled in MMA and very masculine in that way. And so often I'm like, I'm protected by him, but he's like, what if I'm not home? You need to know things. And something happened. I love how much he calls me forward to recognize my own strength. And I strength train because I'm inspired by his own athleticism, which I don't naturally possess. So I think there's all kinds of ways in which it's not about either or, right? It's not about dismissing what comes easy because that can be often, it all gets mixed up because often it's like, oh, that came easily to me. That could be a career. That's one thing. But in life, to chase comfort, that's a different thing.
Yes. And that's why I'm so passionate about living intuitively, having that connection to your intuition to kind of help you direct yourself, because then you can know, and just this connection to yourself where you can tell, am I staying in safety because it's comfortable and easy, or because this is what I'm meant to be doing right now? Or am I pushing myself out of self-punishment or whatever it is?
I think that the world provides us with opportunities, meaning there are periods of plateauing. That's part of being human, right? But I think the world, or you could say the universe, spirit, God, however you want to phrase it, but the world does present us with opportunities. It's when we say, I'm going to push that opportunity aside because I want to stay in comfort. Or you hear things, right? Things come in threes. So you hear things multiple times and you dismiss it. Or I should say, include myself. We dismiss it because I'm not ready to do that. Or I don't want to do that. Or I want to stay in what I know. And I do think the world will come along and do what we can't do for ourselves. And the very famous Pema Chodron quote, which is that if you're invested in security and certainty, and paraphrasing, you're on the wrong planet. I think that people think they understand that, and I don't think they do. And I'm even referring to living in places of the world that feel relative safety versus where other people live, where they are under constant threat and in constant real survival mode. Not that it's not survival mode to want your next paycheck, but really feeling like your village could be overtaken at any time, or that, that kind of, I think we have reached a level of complacency. I can't Uber Eats because I'm out in the woods. But in that culture, we can just order. I grew up in New York City. Anything I wanted was available to me at any hour of the day. And that has been a giant learning curve for me, or, was more when I was younger, but that's not necessarily beneficial to us. Endless choice is also not necessarily beneficial to us. Commitment, obligation, duty is also important, right? It's all of it. It's nuanced. I do think there's something there where, it was amazing when I had no money, how I was able to stretch it. Granted, I had help, I lived on my sister's couch but it's amazing. And now that I'm in, more, it's and sometimes I'm like, I didn't need that. Why did I buy that? And so that's been some work for me of do I need that trip? Do I need that? What do I want here? And what actually feeds me? Because I will say that when I had nothing, I was at some of my freest. Now, I didn't have really obligation. I didn't have my partner. I didn't have animals that I had to look after. But there was a core essence of true liberty. And so I think in a human journey, it's important for us to experience all of it if we have the privilege to, which not everyone does.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of the irony, is that if you're not living in a state of actual threat to your life all the time, then you're able to experience all the range, and it gets harder to force yourself to be uncomfortable or to do the hard thing. But it's even more important because that's how you grow.
Yeah. There's no moving through this world without loss. There's just no moving through without it, right? And sometimes it comes early, sometimes it comes, but it's part and parcel of the temporal nature of being incarnated. It's what do we do with it when it shows up? How do we relate to it? How we relate to the issue is the issue, my teachers used to say. Giving ourselves the opportunity to enjoy when we do have moments of peace or tranquility. Where do we invent drama where there is no drama? We do that a lot as human beings, a lot, right? I mean, I've never watched Real Housewives, but I'm guessing that's a lot of what that is.
Probably. I've also never watched it.
But that kind of thing, right? Reality TV, so much of it is manufactured drama. Mm-hmm. And I think there is something about watching a show where it can be a kind of catharsis, because I think we do need drama, but where do we invent it unnecessarily? And then when it really shows up, do we do everything to push it away? Real drama, real losses. That, I think, is a real question of our current age.
That's such an interesting point. And I think that, again, it's this desire for control and certainty. Mm-hmm. And if the world is bringing us discomfort that we aren't expecting, that we can't control, we want to push it away versus the chaos that we think we can control or that we can handle in some way.
I have a friend who is a very close friend who is a rancher out in Idaho, and she has like the highest grade, I guess they called hogs, right? Where she has pork, heritage pork, and she has to slaughter these pigs at some point. And she, I feel the fact that I eat meat but have never killed an animal. I was vegetarian from 11 to 21, and then I moved to Italy, and in Florence, Italy, it's very hard to not eat meat, right? But there's something about feeling disconnected from that cycle of life. The pigs, while they were alive, are alive. Their lives are amazing. And they're killed in the most humane way. So, and now they think plants also have like feelings and emotions. So there's something about being part of the ecosystem, knowing we too, again, there's this hyper focus on longevity, knowing we too will perish. Our physical form will perish. And there's something about being out living in nature where I'm not in the thick of it, but I do see it. Like there was a sow that got out. No, we don't know who in our rural community she belonged to. But this summer there were like, I think 10 or 11 piglets, and the number dwindled and dwindled. And last I saw just one running. It's like, what happened to them? Coyotes? And I had said to Daniel early on, like, should we take them in? And he's like, what? No, we don't know who they belong. We can't just take them in, But that's just an example. And I was devastated when our neighbor found one piglet, and it was just one piglet, like in the riverbank. Learning to realize death is part of life in all things. It's a real thing. Being in my mid 40s, which hopefully I've got that, I'll live till 90, 100. I don't know. It's a real thing. And I think we just are not having conversations about real things in our culture. We're not addressing reality. We are talking about things that we think we can control, but we are not actually addressing how little we actually do control. And I think that's a function of being overly comfortable.
And not to bring it back to seasonal living, but that's another lesson I've learned from that, is to embrace the cycles and to embrace all the little deaths that are in life. And of course, there are the huge traumatic deaths, and there's all different layers of grief. But once I learned how to start to slow down and live in this different way, or once I started to embrace it, I should say, I started to also embrace all the complexities of my emotions and realize that I feel grief so often. And I feel like there are parts of myself dying and shedding and transforming all the time. And to start to get comfortable with that, to start to be okay with not always knowing who I'm going to be one day to the next, and to grieve different parts of myself, that allowed me to be more comfortable with the cycles of life, the bigger losses, grief on all the different shapes, in all its different shapes and forms. And again, to sit in the discomfort of the unknown and the uncertainty, and to just sit in discomfort, period.
That's it. And not rush to fix or not rush to make sense of it. And, with astrology, one of the things that I really push up against and take issue with is when we use it as a way to concretize our ego. I am this. No, we actually have all of the energy within us, which is why I do circles for every single new moon I can, because we have it all within us. And where do we cling to identity? And where do we cling to identity in a hierarchical way? We see a lot of that in our culture. We see that in the mommy wars. We see that in culture war ping pong. And all of that is ego construct. Because again, it's all temporary. And again, we're not having those conversations. We are clinging as a culture more and more to external, immutable qualities rather than looking at our personal character. And we have lost focus on qualities like character, valor, courage, and strength. We've leaned so far in the vulnerability area and rest and victim consciousness that there is a swing, a pendulum swing coming, because we have over-identified with the shadow of the feminine and made the masculine so toxic that the way we talk about it in our culture, that it's just coming because all the fire and air that's incoming. Like there is going to be a swing back because it doesn't feel good to us ultimately to dwell in being a victim or dwell in the things that we have no control over. It doesn't feel, it literally drains the spirit. So there is an energetic elemental swing coming, and it's how people are going to navigate it.
And do you have suggestions or any insights around how others can prepare for that or how you're preparing for that?
Like with living in seasons, it's like living with the energetics. So we've been in a period of emotional processing, psychological self-awareness, a kind of breakdown of things. A kind of feminine energy is receptive, yielding, retentive. That's kind of right? And again, I'm not talking female, male, I'm talking feminine, right? And which is earth and water. And masculine is fire and air, which is circulation, right? Dialogue, conversation, ideas, but also action. Fire is action, fire is instinct. There's just gonna be a collective shift in the conversation. And because we're also we're entering the Pluto return of the American and French revolutions, we're going to see a lot of those themes that were present then show up. But we're going to see a lot more, I think, conversation about what does moral clarity mean, and rather than moral relativism, which is more of a Piscean quality. We're shifting into Aries big time, 2025, and then 2026 even more. So I wouldn't say it's preparing so much as if one has been living with the energetics, there's been a sloughing off. There's been a kind of spiritual processing. There has been an inquiry in that way and self-investigation. And that's not indefinite. We do that so that we can then take action. It's not so that we pitch a tent there. So I don't think it's about preparing. I think it's tuning in. Just like we don't really do summer activities in the winter and winter activities, it's a similar thing. It's just living in tune with the energetics. It's not as visible.
And I also think the preparing in this sense would be trying to control and trying to predict and have clarity and certainty around what's coming. Because the truth is, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what we're preparing for. So we just...
Exactly.
And that's why I think so much of it comes back to tuning in with ourselves and being able to have those hard conversations, like you were saying, that so many people avoid and aren't having. We need to start having them and to have them with ourselves so that whatever does come our way, we can show up for it connected to ourselves.
Yeah. And we show up how we can in the ways that we can. And a lot of it is out of our control. What is in our control is what we do with the hands and the cards that were dealt. That's it. It's like the ancient wisdom is true for a reason. In many ways in the past decade, people think that they're reinventing the wheel, but truth resonates differently in the body. It doesn't resonate up here. It resonates in the body. We feel it. And the more connected we are to ourselves, the more we're going to feel it.
That sums up like so much of what I believe as the foundation.
Yeah. And that's it. And there's going to be things that make no sense because this world doesn't make sense from a mortal lens. So then we create ideologies that say, okay, this makes sense. But engaging in the mystery and letting the mystery be, the mystery is there anyway. And again, there's this forgetting that, or this illusion that in the bigger picture, we have any say of when we come in and when we go out.
Yeah, I am someone who seeks clarity and likes certainty. And,
You're
you know,
human, you mean?
yeah, I'm human. Exactly. And I'm trying to learn to let uncertainty be exciting and purposeful and opportunistic versus terrifying and paralyzing. And that has been one of my ways that I've been really leaning into the discomfort in my own life, especially recently.
Yeah. Tony Robbins has a famous saying. He says the level of one's success is dependent on one's ability to hold the unknown or uncertainty. I'm paraphrasing. But I think there's real truth to that. It's like, and success can be broadly defined, but our relationship to the unknown dictates a lot of our choices and our actions, because our actions are based on often our beliefs. So if we are constantly of the mindset that whatever resource we value, if we value time, that time is running out. If we value money, money is running out. All of those are constructs, and those beliefs then will dictate our actions will be based on what we are trying to secure. That's why it's not the idea of just being passive. It's the idea of being all in and then letting go of the attachment to outcome. I will say, as someone who is anything I've thought I've wanted, really wanted, like wrote on every manifestation list for you, pretty much didn't get. And I see now what a blessing that was. Mm-hmm. So God is wiser than we often are. And sometimes we're meant to get the thing we want for whatever reason. And sometimes certain souls are not, and there's everything in between. But humility, which is another thing that's sorely lacking, we don't know. So there can be clarity with the next yellow brick. I feel inspired action towards this. And some people, I have a very close friend, she was very clear. She started a business. She wanted to sell it for X number of dollars. That happened for her. That type of, it doesn't work for me. It's not what my soul is here to do. And I'm okay with that. And I think it's beautiful that she had that experience. It's different. It's not that everybody's supposed to be on the same plane. But I do think there is something that it's not as formulaic. There's nothing to sell around it, to say, I don't know. Moment to moment, we see. And astrology is an incredible gateway, and it's an incredible tool, and it's a map, but it's not going to tell you exactly where the end result is. It's here are the opportunities. Here's the energetic opportunity. I have a lot of people who come to me and they're distraught because some other astrologer told them X, Y, and Z, and it was fated and fixed. I don't believe that. I don't believe that everyone, people be like, Venus and X. I'm not even going to say it because people listening to this, but I have Venus and X, and this means this. Venus and X means that I'm only going to attract cheaters. Mm-hmm. What? Yeah. So I think that there is, again, we want a formula. We want it to make sense. And really, the highest spiritual calling is be present now, surrender. It's not non-action. Surrender is not non-action, right? It's action, but surrender. And I don't know. Mm. But a lot of my work is helping my clients uncover underneath what's happening at a soul level and what is it that they're really feeling called towards to focus their attention or their energetics on.
Yeah, because like you said, everyone's path and process is different. And we just need to have acceptance for what ours is and to understand what ours is and focus on ours and not look for others to tell us, follow these steps and you'll manifest your dreams. Follow these steps and you'll have an easy life. And this is how I did it, so this is how you should do it.
Because we don't know. Then you're playing God. You're saying, and that doesn't work out for people in the best way. Meaning like it in terms of the internal process of thinking that you are God and can control everything.
Back to your personal practice, if you're comfortable sharing, if you have, and I don't know if you do, but when we meet in our new moon circles, you lead us through a process of setting our intentions.
Yes.
I'm curious if you have an intention for 2025.
You know, my intention for 2024 was building physical strength and community, and that was kind of co-created with what I was leaning into and what I was feeling. 2025, I haven't, it's interesting, we're in like a period of retrogrades right now. I haven't felt as connected to a word, or it's definitely, it's more in the line with strength. But I also don't want to just call in difficult things just so I gain to it, because I feel pretty strong as is. But there's something about, I have focused so much on my mind and my emotional state, my physical body, which took a major hit in 2016 with my accident. And it's been a very slow recovery. And there is something for me about really stepping into my physical strength and developing skills in the physical world. So I'd like to learn some jiu-jitsu, and I'd like to learn that kind of thing. I do want to learn how to shoot a gun, which is very scary for me. If I even see a gun, I get really scared, but I grew up with someone who was around guns growing up and is very comfortable. And in New Zealand, there's just a very different attitude around it. And he really wants to take me to a range, because there's something in that of me feeling capable in that way. Not that I plan to kill definitely not any animals. I'm not, it's not like that. It's not for hunting, but just to know. I think there's something about that feels important for me, to tap more into real survival skills, because he has all of them. He was raised to have them. And I've been relying on that within him. And I think it's time for me to tap into them for myself.
I love that. And it's so interesting how our relationships bring up parts of ourselves to navigate. And that's why we don't have to seek out the next challenge or the next growth moment or the next step forward. The world will bring it to us. And like you were saying, if we're connected to ourselves, then we can show up for it in the ways that we need to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, these are areas that I am unfamiliar with, and I'd like to know more of my own physical strength and adaptability and resilience. I can weather a lot of heat and I can weather the cold. So I feel like I'm on my way, and even that way. But he's out there chopping wood, literally. He chops our wood, and I marvel at that. And I instead of just marveling at it in him, I want to possess it for myself.
Okay. I feel like I could talk to you forever. The last question is, living intuitively wild means living dedicated to your true, authentic self, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
I have a pretty profound relationship with God. And I'm exploring what that means for me in terms of religion, like the formality of it. But yeah, living intuitively wild for me is actually most connected to the immaterial. And again, I love beautiful things. I'm not over here living an ascetic life, denying myself everything, but that is where I feel the most connected to me and the world.
So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Dani,
Thank
so
you.
much for being here. Please share with everyone where they can find you, connect with you, all the things.
Instagram, website. I don't know when this is coming out, but Paige Apple and I are doing an archetype astrological circle, day and a half of circling retreat, deep exploration, sharing. It's my friend Georgie, who's an amazing chef, is going to fly in and cook for us. And so we have that. And then just, same old way, website.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.